Historian explores famous Viking sites in Iceland.
Imagine you're on a creaking wooden longboat over 1,000 years ago at the height of the Viking Age. You're sailing across the grey North Atlantic. It's freezing cold, there are huge rollers. You're navigating using techniques now long forgotten. You're arriving in a new world to make a new life.
Or plunder.
You're sitting there as the sails taut in the Atlantic breeze above you. Your family, children, women, the cattle all around you. You have everything you need to establish a new home in a new world.
Right.
Iceland.
Oh, Iceland.
Today I'm sailing in the wake of those Vikings, and you're coming with me.
Yeah.
Iceland lies ahead. Let's go and check out the top Viking sites of Iceland.
Holy moly, look at that. Unbelievable. You know what I love about sites like this is that literally the top of the houses look the same as the rest of the grass. I imagine they're using that to cover for heat insulation. In fact, heat insulation is something that I looked into a little bit when it comes to Norse longhouses, and it's mind-blowing.
Before its discovery by the Vikings, Iceland existed in near total isolation at the edge of the North Atlantic. A rugged island shaped by volcanic eruptions and slow-moving glaciers. Yet rumours of its existence endured.
There were persistent rumours in the North Atlantic Scandinavian world, the Viking world, of an island out here to the west.
Awesome. I want to say hello to Sneaky since you are from Scandinavia. That's really cool. We've got a Viking with us, guys. You know what's cool? Since we are mentioning this, and I mean, you're from there, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the words Nordic and the words Scandinavian are not the same. So you can, a country, like all Scandinavian countries are Nordic, but not all Nordic countries are Scandinavian, in the sense that some of the countries in the north of Europe, they are Nordic, but they are not Scandinavia. Not every country is Scandinavia. I believe Denmark is not considered Scandinavia. Am I wrong about that? Well, you let me know, but there is a difference. But maybe today we should review that so that it comes as an opportunity for people to learn that distinction. We'll check it out. I'm going to let him speak a little more, though.
And before it was settled, there are accounts of people arriving here, sometimes by accident, sometimes deliberately. There was Nadador, who was from the Faroe Islands. He was blown off course while fishing, and he reported this strange, seemingly uninhabited island.
Yes.
Another Viking, a man called Floki, he seems to have heard those rumours and those reports, and he decided to actually set out and try and find it for himself. He came here, he may have landed on somewhere near this, and he climbed a mountain, and it said that as he looked inland, all he saw was snow and ice. And it's him that first gave it the name Iceland.
Yeah, I can see that, but it's kind of funny that it's actually quite green, whereas Greenland is the one that probably should have been called Iceland at this point. Hey, whatever. If geopolitics doesn't settle, it's going to turn into orange land anyways, so who cares, am I right? Iceland. So I'm just curious about that, so I'm just going to check it, guys. I want to see exactly what countries are Scandinavian. 1 second. What countries are Scandinavian and what countries are Nordic? I want to know it exactly. Denmark, so I was wrong. It includes the sovereign states of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. That's Nordic, of course. Everything is Nordic. What about Scandinavian, though? What countries are Scandinavia? Scandinavia refers specifically to a region in Northern Europe that includes 3 countries: Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Boom, we got it. So when you say Nordic, it's everything. When you say Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So Finland and Iceland are not Scandinavian, according to this. Good to know. The term Scandinavia comes from the word Scandinavian. It refers to ancient lands of Norse people. Okay. Man, what a beautiful place. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.
So even before settlers came here with their livestock and their cattle and their families, there were these reports, no doubt rumours, no doubt tall stories about a place untouched by humans, a land of ice and fire.
Wow. Icefire land.
Over the 9th and 10th centuries, as many as 60,000 Vikings are estimated to have made their home right here in Iceland.
It's probably really cold.
So why did the Vikings come here? Well, I think actually there are some interesting similarities to other settler colonial movements. They were escaping trouble at home, or they were escaping something at home. Perhaps it was a grasping Norwegian king like Harald Fairhair that was demanding taxes and obedience from his subjects in Norway. Perhaps they were just adventurous spirits. They wanted to live in a different way. They wanted to stake out a piece of ground that perhaps they couldn't in Norway because of overpopulation or because they were the second son, something like that.
I think it could also have to do with economic instability. Like if you imagine you have a lot of debt, I mean, go to freaking Iceland at that point, you know what I mean?
We know from the archaeological finds that some of them may have served their apprenticeship. They had gone a Viking, they'd raided, they'd pillaged, they'd captured, made a bit of money for themselves. They were looking for a new kind of life. Perhaps they wanted to go back to farming, that's to raise a family. This seemed like a more peaceful place than Yorkshire or outside Dublin. There was also the pull factor. There were raw materials here. There were walrus tusks. There's great fishing. There's land.
Man, it makes you feel like Valheim, literally, you know, when you're like, I've explored the entirety of the current continent, let's go to the next one and see what kind of biomes we get. So again, now he talks about raw materials, and I'm already thinking, okay, what can you make with the husks? When you go home, and the moment you pick it up, it's gonna unlock all the new recipes. If you think about it, you know, when he was saying it's probably more peaceful than York or Ireland, it does make sense, because when you settle in a land that is basically Britannia, you have to deal with the Mercians, you have to deal with all the others, the Saxons, and of course there's going to be battles, going to be trouble. So in a place like this, if you imagine that you are someone from this period and you hear, oh no, there's none of that in this country in the north. It's I wonder what percentage of it is farmable. We might Google that. You know what? I'm gonna Google that right now, because I am interested in seeing that. Because I mean, when you call it Iceland, kind of doesn't make you feel like this is the place where you could just farm and make bread and pasta. But then again, let me see, what percentage of Iceland is farmable? Is that a word? Here it says only about 1% of Iceland's total land area is considered arable. Yeah, that's the word. Or suitable for cultivation. Yeah, that's pretty bad. What else is it saying? However, agricultural land, including pastures for livestock, accounts for roughly 18 to 19% of the total land area. Still pretty low. But yeah, I mean, you're not going to make crops if this is accurate. I'm trying to see if there's arable land percentage of Iceland. Let's have a look. Country, Afghanistan. Why am I looking? Oh, yeah, there we go. Most recent value 1.2 in 2023. And that's with modern tech. And then when you compare it to like even Albania has like 20 times that. What about Italy at this point? I'm getting invested in this. Italy, 24, I thought so. Yeah, Japan kind of half of Italy, but that's because there is a lot of mountainous terrain, so I can see that.
In this landscape, I think the future was more of a blank canvas than it was back in Scandinavia or British and Irish Isles. You could seize the future that you wanted.
Cool. If you survive. Would you have
Before
gone?
its discovery by the Vikings, Iceland existed in near total isolation at the edge of the North Atlantic.
Yes.
A rugged island shaped by volcanic eruptions and slow-moving glaciers. Yet rumours of its existence endured. Reykjavik, meaning smoky bay, most likely named after the steam arising from the geothermal activity.
Mm-hmm.
So the story you get from the sagas is that Ingolf Arnason really is the first settler. He puts down a community pretty much on this spot in Reykjavik in around 874. And this is what's so exciting about the excavations that's gone on beneath the city street today. We've got this Longhouse here. You can see these huge paving stones leading up to that door, a big turf wall that would have gone...
Oh, look at that. So that's the Longhouse perimeter. It kind of looks like the ones I make in Valheim. So at least now I don't feel bad, because sometimes I'm like, maybe I make them too rectangular. Maybe I should have made them larger. No, It looks exactly like that.
The roof supported by big posts of oak imported probably from Europe, and a big hearth in the middle of fire.
Yeah.
A chieftain's hut, perhaps even the Anderson family themselves. But what's so fascinating is that archaeologists have discovered a complicating factor, which is what archaeologists do, and that's why they add so much to the historical record. If you come over here, you can see a structure which appears, does date from before 874. Wow. And we know that because of this material here. Do you see this lighter covered dust almost? Well, this is volcanic debris, it's volcanic matter. And what's great about Iceland is there's a real rhythm to life and settlement here, which is occasionally you get these enormous volcanic eruptions, and they leave a layer of ash. And each of those layers of ash have different chemical signatures, so you know which volcano they've come from.
Yes.
This one, we know, was around 871, give or take a year or two. And we now think, thanks to this detective work by archaeologists and this volcanic matter here, that this really is perhaps decades before Arneson arrives, which means that the settlement of Iceland might not have been quite as clear-cut. And you do get a sense of that from the sagas too, so they're not in disagreement. But it seems that people could have been coming here for perhaps centuries. They might have come here for summers. They might have come hunting walrus, looking for a place to settle. But then they would often head back to Scandinavia before the onset of winter.
Makes sense.
And so this area was known about. It would have been reccied. Reports would have reached Norse Viking people in Scandinavia, but also in Britain and Ireland. People might have come for a summer and then gone home. They might have stayed for a winter or two. And it was that 874 date is probably the arrival of full-time settlers. They would have brought livestock with them.
Yeah.
They would have brought women and children of a community. They'd have settled down. They'd have started mining in the bogs for iron. They'd have started working in blacksmith shops. They started pulling together all different threads you need to build a sustainable, permanent settlement.
Fascinating stuff.
Norse communities began to push inland, spreading across Iceland's wide, untouched grassland.
That's what I mean, though. When I see this, I would have called it Greenland, honestly, but that's just me.
Carving out farms and building new homes in an unforgiving landscape.
Yeah.
To get a better understanding of what daily life was really like for these first settlers, I'm leaving Reykjavik behind and heading to a reconstruction of a Viking longhouse.
Wow.
A place where Iceland's story truly began.
It must be, I mean, I know it's a harsh environment. I imagine it's so cold that it's going to freeze your soul inside your body. Still, imagine waking up in the morning inside the longhouse and then you open this and you just see nature. No nonsense, no posts or necks, nothing. Just you, the nature, the cycle. Man, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Just look at this.
Yeah.
A legendary Viking longhouse, very carefully reconstructed, based on the archaeology they found in this valley. And this is how they survived in this very hostile environment. And look at, the first thing you notice, these big, thick turf walls. Now, this isn't mud, it's turf. It's this section of soil right at the top of the soil, just beneath the grass. It's full of roots and full of air, so it's perfect for insulation. This is 1 metre thick on this wall. You can see stone foundation at the bottom there, so solid foundation, but this needs to be replaced, this turf, once every 10, 15 years. And then roof up here, turf on the roof as well, so you've got this wonderful grass growing. And this is what you need, really, to protect yourself against these savage Icelandic winters. Not just the winter. I'm here in September, and it is absolutely freezing with the wind chill. It's below zero. These buildings kept these communities safe in these conditions. Turf, stone, around a wooden frame. Inside there is wood, but big bits of wood were in short supply in Iceland. As you can see, not many trees around.
Not many trees around. Yeah, I can see that for a whole community. Man, it's amazing, you know, it's one of those things where even though people from the past, whether it be the Middle Ages or whether it be, in this case, the Viking Age or before that, Bronze Age, Iron Age, it's like, even though they didn't understand the chemistry, they didn't understand at a molecular level, like the science behind certain things, that doesn't mean that they didn't understand cause and result. So a lot of the times, even in medieval, they did get things right with blacksmithing. It's not that they understood the different, what's actually happening, of course, when it comes to the reactions inside, but they knew how to keep testing. And they're like, okay, so if you add this amount, this happens. If you remove this amount of whatever it is, then the component or constituent, then we create this better kind of this type of steel, but now it's too hard, it's brittle. So maybe we hardened it too much. And they found the middle range, and then they knew for swords they wanted it harder, for armor they wanted it more for a medium carbon steel. And it's the same with this kind of stuff. Now we can analyze it from a scientific perspective and explain to you exactly why this combination and this specific choice of soil produces the best insulation. But for them, it was literally a matter of try a different thing. We are freezing to freaking death. Let's do it again. Let's try this other thing and keep trying, and then preserving orally or in a written form the traditions over a very long span of time ends up having results, makes it look as if they understand the science. They understand the upper layer of the science, but that's enough to do things that now we can explain, and then we'll be surprised by it. It's really a matter of, experiential knowledge is not a small thing. Absolutely not.
And the Vikings are actually responsible for chopping down the trees that were here in their first couple of 100 years
I can see that.
of settlement of Iceland, as they had to make do with driftwood that washed up on the shores, with wood that was imported from Norway. Wood was very precious. When you moved house, you up sticks and leave. You take all the wood with you and you go and build somewhere else. So let's get inside now, get out of this wind, through this lovely wooden door frame.
Yeah.
Nice door. Wow, yeah.
Hello.
You get a sense, a metre of turf and you're in. Woo, it's warm.
Man, that's cozy.
What a difference. I mean, it must be 20 degrees warmer in here. And
man, look at this. I expected the Hearth to be bigger, but that could be because I played Skyrim too much. Look at these poles. Look at the inside is all wood. Man, that looks exactly like Valheim. That's insane. Even this, you remember if you played it, you know. If you played it, you know. Anyways, look at that. Quite a bit of space is required for structural support. Makes sense. I see it every meter or so. Maybe a little more space here in the middle, maybe 1.5 meters. There's a little chest. This is where you would sleep, and this too is where you would sleep.
And you're suddenly out of that howling wind, completely protected. First thing you notice is the hearth. This would have been so important.
Yeah.
A big hearth. They would have cooked on this hearth. It was the only light really in the room. There was a little bit of a chimney, but the hearth the fire is responsible for much of the light. No windows.
So the chimney is actually very important for air filtering. If you close everything up and put nothing, then the air exchange is going to be non-existent and you're going to smoke yourself.
And then also this is where people would have gathered around for warmth,
and
stories. And hanging out and doing their chores. So this is the owner's bed. You can see these lovely carvings to denote that status. Yeah. Quite short because they'd have sat up in bed in that medieval period, so you wouldn't have needed to stretch out and lie down, which is good. And then simpler beds on this side of the room. And it seems like master, children, relatives, but also servants, perhaps even slaves, would have all slept in this room.
Right.
I think there was something about this climate that meant they didn't have the luxury of radically different living conditions and treating people very differently. There was a communal nature to it. Slaves would have been very, very valuable indeed. They'd have been essential to help run the farm and to help make things. And they would also have been, in the winter, a good source of heat. The more bodies in here, the better.
It's like a thing even in countries where there isn't a problem with extreme cold, say for instance China. In dynastic China, they did put the pigs inside the house because they didn't want the pigs to be eaten. And that's why if you look at the Chinese character for how you write house, I'm going to show you because that's kind of an interesting thing. It's probably you know, but if you don't, then it would be interesting. The Chinese character to write house, and they also use it in Japanese. It's just they pronounce it differently. And in Chinese, it's pronounced tia for stone, tia. What's interesting is this represents the roof, and this is the pig. So literally, it's a pig under a roof, which if that's how they wrote it, if that's the first thing that came to mind, how are we going to write a house? Which is obviously, of course, pig under the roof. So it must have been extremely common. And in fact, you can see the development of that kind of from the oracle bones and Bronze Age. and then it gets stylized. But that's the idea. So this is how common it was, even in countries that don't really have the super cold problem, to get the animals in. So they don't get stolen and whatnot. The home is where the pig is under the roof.
Very cozy. You got to know each other very well indeed. Nothing like the privacy that we recognise today, we hanker after today.
Yeah.
And then right in the back here.
What's that? Yeah.
You have a very important room, a partition here with a lock on it. And only one person had the key to that lock. That would be the woman of the house, the responsible, the organised person. Because in here is the pantry. So especially this time of year, September, you are laying in the supplies, all of the things that you've gathered, all the berries that you're drying and turning into jams, the lamb that you've salted. That's all going into this area here. You've got beer there that you've made from the barley. That was one of the crops that you could grow in Iceland. You've got the skyr, the famous Icelandic skyr, which is thick, yogurt-like, high in protein, yogurt-like substance, which can keep you going through the winter as well. So that...
Yeah, it's not like you... I think we've become so spoiled. Like right now, if we don't get the sauce we want, oh, I can't eat that then. Oh, my day's ruined. I've heard people say this, and it drives me insane. Imagine a situation like this where every berry count. Like, that's what we've got. That's what you eat. You can't complain about every meal has to be exactly what I want, when I want it, how I want it. Imagine if they could hear that. If people that had to enjoy this as that's my life, if they would hear the way we complain these days. Oh, for instance, I want McDonald's. Oh, the one close to me is closed. What the? And we go nuts. Yeah, how about this? Let's go hunt. You want meat? Let's go hunt. We didn't get the deer. We're not eating meat. Next time, don't miss. Seriously.
It would have been absolutely packed this time of year. It would have felt very satisfying getting that whole room ready for the winter.
For sure.
Knowing that your chance of survival absolutely depended on those supplies lasting through the months of darkness. And then you've got all the other activities of Viking life, of Icelandic life. You have got you're spinning, you're creating using that wool from the sheep. You're brushing it out. Mm-hmm. You're brushing the wool until it is threads that you can then spin together, create yarn, and eventually woolen garments. Again, essential for keeping you alive. You've got to wear a lot of wool in this climate. So spinning, making wool, that was actually an export. That was a valuable export of Iceland. That was controlled by women. So women very powerful in the society. They were the breadwinners in that respect. They could bring in much needed extra income. As for the men,
women were very powerful. Come on, man. Not because it's not true what he's saying. Absolutely, an invaluable member of the community. It's just the language. It's just the language these days makes me cringe, but whatever.
Well, the men had their various uses.
He does live in the UK, so he doesn't want to get imprisoned. Let's get, they don't have freedom of speech over there, so he has to say one or two things that gives him the little check in the box. Okay, he said it. He doesn't need to go to be imprisoned for 10 years.
But one of the more famous Viking male pursuits was raiding.
Yes.
And that would involve
hunting.
Months, perhaps years away, raiding other settlements.
Or trading.
Elsewhere in the North Atlantic world. And exploring. First Iceland, then Greenland, then Vinland.
That was a nice shield. Let's have a look at it.
First.
Okay. Of course, this is done right. This is from, I imagine, Department of Archaeology. So we have a beautiful, obviously handmade iron boss. You can tell when it's handmade. In fact, I just don't like it when it's machine made in India. You can tell. I hate machine made stuff because after you've seen enough handmade, and I own a few, I can't look at the machine made anymore. It's just so obvious. In its imperfections, it's perfect. Then it's clearly covered. You can't see the planks, and that's how it's supposed to be. Viking TV series, and it's been covered in some kind of fabric. And this could be canvas, could be gessoed, in fact, sometimes, could be linen. There are all sorts of possibilities, and in fact, we don't really see it right now, but in my experience, when it comes to museum examples, sometimes they're only covered in the front while the back is left with the planks exposed. Other times, it's both front and back covered in fabric. So both are acceptable from a historical reenactment point of view because we have examples for both. Now, when it comes to the rim, clearly they went for rawhide, which in my opinion would have been the most common. Metal rim exists. Full iron rim existed too. It's just that I think everybody went for that in the modern idea of how we make these. And so now we kind of flipped the other way around. Even in the movies, everyone has an iron rim. I think an iron rim would have been more expensive, so a rawhide rim would have been more common. The way it's put together, so they went with this one for many nails or rivets. That's a possibility, but also another possibility would have been to stitch it. So the one thing that I do not believe is present in current museums and even iconography is both. So either you have three options, but it's one or the other in my experience. So either you go for nails, which would be the least likely, this one, fully nailed all around. It's an option, but it's the least common. Or you can go for stitches, the most common, or you could go for metal clamps. So you got one here, then one here, at intervals, one here, one here. So metal clamps that are literally bent into shape, and then they stay there. You could use copper or you could use iron, kind of depending on what availability you had. Very nice example though, and of course you could paint your whatever clan symbol if you wanted.
Then Vinland into North America. And it all happened because of the intrepid, hardy, tough, resilient men and women who lived in places like this.
Yeah, awesome. Good episode, very good episode from History Hit.
From these scattered communities, wider networks began to take shape, slowly evolving into a shared system of law and governance. Disputes had to be settled, grievances aired, and laws agreed.
Look at this.
And for centuries, there was only one place to do it. Each year, people from across Iceland gathered here at Thingvellir, the site of the ancient open-air parliament, where the business of an emerging nation was conducted beneath the open sky.
Wow.
This is one of the most important places in Iceland, if not the most important place, because this is a site well situated, just inland from Reykjavik, equidistant between the main powerful families of Iceland as it was being settled in that early era of settlement. And this is a place where once a year, at the height of summer, all of those great lords would come with their retinues. It was ideal. There was pasture for horses. There were birch forests for firewood. There's a huge lake down there with brown trout, a river running through it for fresh water. And this landscape was suddenly transformed for a couple of weeks every single year into a city, a town really, the only town in Iceland. People from all of these outlying areas would come together. And you can still see evidence of that because this is Iceland. It's cold, even at the height of summer, potentially. It's windy. And so they wouldn't just set up tents. They actually had permanent foundations, and you can see some of them around me now. You can see these stone foundations. They would bring turf. They would bring their own wood. They would bring canvas or blankets and create these sort of, hardened tents. Then the lords would live there with their retinues, with their families. They would gather. They would do business. They would exchange sons and daughters on the marriage market. But most importantly, they were gathering for politics. How to rule Iceland, how to get along, how to resolve disputes that arise between them. They were here for a parliament, and that meets over there.
Okay. Man, I love the rivers. Iceland must have
one of
some
the
of the most
reasons
beautiful...
that they chose to come here, all the natural features I mentioned, but also there's something very special about this place. There is something about this landscape. It is awe-inspiring. They chose, little did they know, but they chose the place where the North American plate meets what will become the Eurasian plate.
Oh.
So this isn't just a meeting place of men. It turns out it's a meeting place of the Earth's crust itself. How perfect is that? Wait,
flag. That's the Icelandic flag, I imagine, of course, we're in Iceland. I still get a little confused with the flags of Nordic countries sometimes. I'm still trying, because they are all sort of similar. Let me see if I can remember them. You know, I'm going to test myself right now. Let's do this so they can become educational. So, first and foremost, not going to cheat. So, let me think. So, Sweden is the easiest one. It's blue background, yellow cross, right? I got that one right. Now, next. Norway, for what I kind of, okay, I'm kind of getting them spoiled here, but I was going to go for Norway. Is Norway the red and blue, or am I getting confused? Yeah, red and blue. Okay, I'm not doing too bad. So, this is Norway. Denmark, red background, but white cross. I think the one that really gets confusing for me is Finland. Well, no, actually, Finland is not too bad because it's white. And which one do I get confused? I think I confuse Norway with Iceland. That's what I do.
We've just come up the river a little bit from that camping area, and now we are here at the heart of this Icelandic project, really. Look at that, this huge natural amphitheatre.
Yeah.
This was the Law Rock. And this is where every single free Icelandic man, so not the women, not the enslaved people, but the free Icelandic men could come here and they would stay down here in the amphitheatre. They perhaps were in the gorge beyond as well. But they would listen to the law speaker, and he would stand up there and he would recite the laws as they'd been agreed, so that everyone in the country knew the laws under which they lived. Now, those laws were decided by a sort of assembly of the nobles. It was a couple of hundred people. There were the great lords of Iceland and a couple of advisors, and they met just over here as well.
The great lords of Iceland. That sounds epic. Like, what do you do? Oh, I'm one of the great lords of Iceland. Man, what an achievement in life.
And they would all agree on a consensus. They'd agree on laws. Those laws were then given at this place. But normal people could have their say. They could speak up. They could ask for redress. They could talk about things that they were suffering from, injustice. They could also bring disputes here, and those disputes would be decided in this 2-week period around midsummer. So this is seen really as the world's oldest national assembly, the world's oldest parliament. It's an enormous Icelandic contribution to the march of global democracy.
No, is it democratic in a sense? You know what's interesting about the democratic system is that it's more ancient than you think. And obviously, for those who are familiar with ancient Greek history and ancient Roman systems, then you kind of know that bare minimum you can go back to classical antiquity and you can go back to ancient Greece. We know that it's not a modern system. Although then again, when it comes to the Roman system, the Republic, it didn't function exactly as way that democracy worked in Greece. In fact, even though I don't even know if we should use the same term, well, I guess it's just that modern democracies tend to be representative, whereas ancient democracies were pure democracies, which function differently. And in fact, the Roman type of republican system was even more so, even more representative. It was closer to the way things function in both modern Italy, but in America as well. It's closer to the Roman system than it is to the Greek system, to be honest. But anyways.
Iceland's contribution to the development of democracy is truly unique, and it's something Icelanders today are fiercely proud of. But there's something else they take just as much pride in.
What's that?
Their hot springs.
Oh, yeah.
Iceland is world famous for its hot springs. They are everywhere as you look around the landscape. You see these plumes of steam coming up from little fissures in the rock, little geysers all over this island.
Geyser.
I'm heading to a place now where there's a
All right, Diamond Geyser.
particularly thick concentration. And even though it's pretty near freezing point, I think I might go in for a little swim, have a little hot tub. Nature's hot tub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had those in Rome too, but yeah. In this environment, amazing.
These geothermal springs are unbelievable. Never been anywhere like it.
Look at that. Ooh, man, that sound. Amazing microphone. Are they better than Finnish sauna? Who knows? All right, show the muscle. Show the muscle. Let's go.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
that's nice.
is perfection. Best thing I've ever done.
Wow, my
It is
gosh, that
freezing
looks
up
nice.
It's like a hot bath here.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, imagine the Norse, like after a hunting party, pretty strong, muscular, put it in there, get a little water. Oh, that would be amazing. That would be fantastic. What the temperature is, I wonder.
That was an experience like no other I've ever had. It's pretty cold up here. It's actually about zero, particularly with the wind chill.
Get dressed,
and
come on.
yet, there's a bathtub running through the middle of this valley. No wonder the
freezing.
Vikings wanted to move here. First of all, the climate was a bit warmer than it is today. There was agricultural land. There was no one to compete with. They were safe from human enemies. There was an abundance of fish in the streams.
Yeah.
And here, at regular intervals, free superheated water to warm their houses and warm their bones in the middle of winter.
I wonder if there is flint to be found around the river.
I think I'd have emigrated here.
Yeah, that's funny. Anyways, it was a pretty decent video. There is about 6 minutes left. I will stop the react at this point in case you liked it. Like, no, but I want to see the rest. Watch it in the original channel. So we'll give him a like and a view. But this was pretty good. Pretty good, I've got to say. Very nice indeed.